Mali's incumbent president, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, wins a landslide victory in the presidential runoff election. Known around the world for her magnificent and powerful voice, the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, has passed away at age 76. And the DRC tries an experimental Ebola treatment in an effort to contain the latest outbreak. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhu. You are in for Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with the official announcement that incumbent President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta of Mali has won a landslide victory in the West African nation's presidential runoff election. Turnout in the runoff vote was only 34%, as voters stayed away due to threats of violence by jihadist militants. Official results announced Thursday revealed Keïta won Sunday's second round of voting soundly, beating challenger and opposition leader Soumaïla Cissé. The government stepped up security for Sunday's runoff, deploying 6,000 troops in addition to the 30,000 who already were on duty. Territorial Administration Minister announced the official results.
Results. Mr. Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, 1,798,632 votes, or 67.17% of the votes cast. Mr. Soumaïla Cissé, 879,235 votes, or 32.83% of the votes cast. Thank you for your attention.
Despite the added security, a polling station president was killed in the northern Timbuktu region, and the polling station there was burned. The campaign manager for President Keïta says they ran a near-perfect campaign and the voters' choice was clear.
We have never made a mistake. We always said IBK was the candidate of the people of Mali. And in the first round, he won in all the regions of Mali, outside and in the Bamako district. In the second round, the major candidates who came out of the first round rallied behind him. The third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and so on. So you can see for yourself, he won the first round with all this rallying behind him. It's obvious that it was going to be a plebiscite. This plebiscite was clear and is the expression of the clear wish of the Malian voters.
Meanwhile, a supporter of Soumaïla Cissé says the vote tabulations were fraudulent and they won't allow the election to be taken away from them.
These are not results, it's just folklore. They want us to give them blood and we will. Because we cannot allow for a victory to be stolen before the whole world and the people of Mali. This victory, we deserve it and we won in a dignified and honest manner without doing anything. It is the Malians who have expressed themselves through the ballot box. Why go and stuff ballot boxes in the north and in the center if they don't want us to set fire to this country and shed blood? If it is blood they want, that is what we'll give them.
Keïta now faces the immense task of lifting the gold and cotton producing country out of a spiral of Islamist and ethnic violence despite the presence of UN and French troops. An infantry battalion of China's 4th Peacekeepers to South Sudan has resolved a conflict breaking out among refugees in the capital, Juba. The peacekeepers say they received a report saying that refugees were fighting with hacking knives beside the 3rd UN refugee camp, with one refugee severely injured. Soon after the injured was transported to a hospital, refugees of the 1st UN refugee camp broke through the block and fought with those of the 3rd camp. Some refugees were also reported to have attacked the peacekeepers with knives when they tried to separate the fighting groups. Peacekeepers from other countries also sent forces and used non-lethal weapons to help resolve the conflict. Nigerians are turning to social media to debate the way the country is run as thoughts turn to presidential and legislative elections to be held early next year. The Tracker Project, an organization which monitors public spending by tracking the progress of government projects, is encouraging Nigerians to use social media to share photographs and videos of various projects. The projects range from unfinished roads to school building renovations before passing on grievances to public officials to seek action. Let's listen to Olusegun Onigbinde, one of Trackers' co-founders, followed by Babajimi Benson, a Nigerian lawmaker.
Every election cycle is always important, but we always emphasize to people that it's not just about elections. You need to hold public officers to account. So voting on election day is a critical civic duty and also a way to demonstrate that your voice matters in the political system. But what happens afterwards, you must have eternal vigilance to take note about what is happening and also hold public officers account. So that's what we also want to put into play. Another thing is the worrisome trend of vote buying and also what people call stomach infrastructure and local balance. And it's offensive for us. We also think it's one of the key elements that destroys legitimacy of accountability.
It's a positive inclusion into the democratic space. So they use the word eagle, so it's good. They bring the projects onto the knowledge of the constituents. And the lawmaker also has it at the back of his mind that somebody is also watching. You understand? And it's also a way whereby the citizenry are also better educated that these projects are not funded by the lawmaker.
Development in Nigeria has been held back by poor infrastructure, and officials from local to federal government have for decades been accused of mismanaging public finances, while most people live on less than $2 a day. Zimbabwe's opposition challenge against President Emmerson Mnangagwa's election victory will be heard in the Constitutional Court on August 22nd. The opposition leader spokesperson said on his Twitter account Thursday. The state-run Herald newspaper also confirmed that the case would be heard on Wednesday next week, adding that Nelson Chamisa has been directed to file his answering affidavit and heads of argument by 12 noon on Saturday. President Mnangagwa has been given up to 10 a.m. on Monday to file his. Chamisa says the July 30th presidential vote, the first since the removal of Robert Mugabe last year, was rigged by a biased electoral commission. The Electoral Commission and Mnangagwa say there was no foul play. The Constitutional Court can throw the case out, declare a new winner, or order a fresh election. A Libyan appeals court has sentenced 45 people to death by firing squad for killings committed in Tripoli during a 2011 uprising. A statement from the Justice Ministry did not give details of the case, but a Justice Ministry official says it's related to killings by forces loyal to former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi shortly before he was toppled. A further 54 people were sentenced to 5 years in prison over the killings of at least 20 people, while 22 were acquitted. In its latest annual report, human rights group Amnesty International described Libya's court system as dysfunctional and noted that many people may have been held since 2011 with no judicial oversight or means to challenge the legality of their detention. 3 Ugandan lawmakers who are critics of President Yoweri Museveni have been charged with treason on Thursday for their suspected role in the stoning of his convoy. President Museveni traveled late Monday to campaign for a ruling party candidate contesting in a parliamentary by-election when the vehicle carrying him had its rear windscreen smashed. 5 legislators were arrested moments after the attack. Among them, Cassiano Wadri, an independent who won the by-election, appeared in court and were charged with dozens of other co-accused in a magistrate's court in Gulu town. 2 other legislators, Francis Zaake and Robert Changulanyi, a popular musician known as Bobby Wine, were not among those brought to the court on Thursday. Relatives who traveled to Gulu to attend the proceedings said they do not know the whereabouts of Zaake and Changulanyi. Musical icon Aretha Franklin, known by millions around the world as the Queen of Soul, died on Thursday at the age of 76. The American singer with a powerful voice had been ill for a while. Franklin was considered one of America's greatest musical artists. She sold millions of albums, received numerous honors and awards, including 18 Grammys, and was loved by generations of fans, artists, and celebrities the world over. VOA's Julie Tabo has more on the life and times of Aretha Franklin.
Hey, what you Aretha Franklin's rendition of the song Respect soared to the top of the charts, earning the singer the first of her 18 Grammys, the recording industry's most prestigious award. The hit song became an anthem for women.
But everyone wants respect. Everyone needs respect, from the young to the very old, and in the middle, male, female. We all want respect, and we all want to be appreciated. So it pretty much means the same thing to me now that it did then.
Respect is exactly what the singing sensation received over a career of almost 60 years. From fellow artists, celebrities, presidents, and millions of fans around the world.
I've been so many places in my life and time.
She achieved many cultural milestones along the way. At the age of 52, Franklin was the youngest recipient of the prestigious Kennedy Center Honors and was one of 14 legendary Americans to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2005. Franklin was tireless, performing at countless venues, including President Barack Obama's 2009 inauguration. Many say she was as gracious in person as she was on stage.
Music is my thing. That's who I am. I'm in it for the long run, so I'll be around singing, "What you want, baby, I got it."
While the Queen of Soul may no longer be physically with us, her music will continue to reign for generations to come. Julie Tavro, VOA News.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Still ahead on Africa 54, the DRC deploys an experimental Ebola treatment as cases rise. But first, a look at Thursday's headlines. Well, it's time now for our health report, and joining us is Africa 54 health correspondent Leno Mudu with an update on an experimental Ebola treatment. Leno?
That's right, Esther. The Democratic Republic of Congo is deploying an experimental Ebola treatment in an effort to contain the latest outbreak of the viral disease. Health officials in the Democratic Republic of Congo are using the experimental MAB-114 Ebola treatment to counter the latest flare-up of the virus. This is the first time the treatment has been deployed against an active outbreak. World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus explains.
Of course, INRB is already treating, as we speak, 5 patients using that monoclonal antibody. It got clearance from the National Council or the National Ethical Committee, and I was informed, I have the information that they're doing well.
The DRC's health ministry says there are 66 cases to date and about 42 people have died from the hemorrhagic fever. Congo's health ministry says the outbreak has spread from its epicenter in North Kivu province to neighboring Ituri province after an infected person returned home.
We, of course, have to be more aggressive, and we're increasing the number of health professionals we have on the ground, and we're doing everything we can in order to be more aggressive than the virus.
The WHO's Director General says internal conflict is hampering efforts to contain the outbreak in the Congo and has issued a call to the warring parties to cease hostilities. The MAB-114 treatment was developed in the United States by the National Institutes of Health using the antibodies of the survivor of an Ebola outbreak in the western Congolese city of Kikwit in 1995.
But on the use of the particular molecule, it will be the decision by the patient, by the doctor or by the physician, and the patient's consent. So that will, of course, impact it. So on roll out, we would like to speed up as much as possible so we have as many beneficiaries as possible.
Separately, authorities have vaccinated more than 200 health workers and contacts of Ebola patients. In an outbreak in Western DRC, which began in April and was declared over in July, an experimental vaccine manufactured by Merck was given to 3,300 people and was considered key in containing the virus when it reached a city. Ebola causes fever, vomiting, and diarrhea, and in some cases, internal and external bleeding. It is often fatal if untreated.
Now, the United Nations Children's Fund is shipping an additional 90 tons of health, water, and sanitation supplies to help contain the Ebola outbreak in the eastern DRC. The supplies are shipped from the Global UNICEF warehouse in Copenhagen, Denmark, and come in addition to the 14 tons of supplies that UNICEF has already deployed to the affected zone in the North Kivu province of the DRC. UNICEF says the supplies will help to inform and protect local communities, to promote access to safe water, adequate sanitation, and proper hygiene practices to help prevent further spread of the disease, as well as to provide psychosocial support to children and families who need it. Tajuddin Oyaule is the Deputy Country Representative of UNICEF in the DRC.
Our role as UNICEF is basically taking technical leadership role in 3 areas. The first is on communication. We are responsible for ensuring that community members understand what they need to do to prevent and protect themselves. The second is on water, hand washing, and hygiene, to make sure that people do not transmit infection by adopting good behaviors. And the last is to provide psychosocial support to families, including children of cases who are affected by Ebola. And this is why we partner with everyone, including WHO and the government, to contribute towards the response to Ebola outbreak in the DRC.
And UNICEF says through these activities, they have been able to reach already 30,000 people with life-saving prevention messages. Now, animal-assisted therapy is a growing field that uses animals to help people recover from or better cope with health problems, such as heart disease, cancer, and mental health disorders. While the most common therapy animal is dogs, the use of other creatures is on the rise. More now from VOA's Faith Lapidus.
It's been shown that petting a dog can trigger the release of the feel-good hormone oxytocin, lower your blood pressure, and help you de-stress. But so can brushing a donkey.
It calms me down, relaxes me.
That's the idea, says Steve Steyert, who owns Donkey Park.
They're great stress sponges. You can sit down in here and you know, escape your office life, your urban life. We get a lot of people come up from the city, travel long distances, and when they come out, you can just see the stress melting away from them.
The nonprofit park north of New York City is home to 9 miniature donkeys, 2 full-size donkeys, and 1 zebra-donkey mix called a zonkey. The animals travel to schools and nursing homes. The small park also hosts groups like this one from a local organization that serves people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They groom the animals, lead them through an obstacle course, and feed them hay.
Come on down here, Jarrell. They've got enough there.
While donkeys are beasts of burden in most of the world, their only job here is to nuzzle, bray, and beguile the diverse group of people who find comfort in their company. I'm Faith Lapidus, VOA News.
And that's our health report for today. Esther?
Leno, thank you very much. But I still want to take you back to DRC because this Ebola crisis has gone on for so long, and people even in the neighboring country are concerned about the spread of this Ebola. What do people in DRC feel now with the new experiments going on, new vaccines? What more do you know?
Well, you know, the general sentiment is hope. people are hopeful to see that there is a new vaccine coming in as well as new treatment. Because as you know, Ebola was discovered in the 70s in the DRC. And the vaccine and the treatment are game changers, as some observers have said. And people are really hopeful that it will be a new way to prevent, not only prevent, but also treat Ebola, and the disease will really stay at bay, because DRC, this is the 10th outbreak, and the people are tired, really.
All right, Lino, thank you very much for the update on what's going on in Ebola. And we want to remind you that you can watch Lino Mudu's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54.
Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, 1,798,632 voix.
Sadly, far too many powerful leaders around the world have been moving the agenda of human rights backwards.
Welcome back. Now, the President of the United States has repeatedly termed the media the enemy of the people. He has called the press dangerous and sick, and even alleges the media can cause war. But some American journalistic outlets are declaring they have had enough of the president's rhetoric, which they decry as dangerous. Some are pushing back in an unprecedented and coordinated editorial campaign. We get details from VOA White House Bureau Chief Steve Herman.
They are the fake, disgusting news.
At nearly every one of his frequent political rallies, U.S. President Donald Trump, to the delight of the partisan crowd, harshly criticizes the media.
The only negative stories from the fakers back there.
The president and his administration contend that many American mainstream media outlets treat them unfairly. While journalists note that being the target of presidential criticism is often part of the job, being labeled enemies of the people is unacceptable to some. The frustration was palpable at a recent White House press briefing.
I think it would be a good thing if you were to say right here at this briefing that the press, the people who are gathered in this room right now, doing their jobs every day, asking questions of officials like the ones you brought forward earlier, are not the enemy of the people. I think we deserve that.
I think the president has made his position known. I also think it's ironic. I'm trying to answer your question.
The White House press secretary failed to rebut the president's use of the phrase equated with the brutal consequences of Stalinism.
I have covered White Houses myself. I've watched this for a very long time. I have never seen, and I cannot imagine, a situation where there is more tension, hostility, between the press corps and the president, mostly coming from the president.
The press is fighting back. Around 200 American newspapers on Thursday will make a coordinated editorial pushback to decry the president's attacks on the media. The campaign is led by the Boston Globe, which declares that the dirty war on the free press must end. Every participating newspaper, which includes large and small newspapers across the political spectrum, will write its own editorial, not necessarily using the same rhetoric as the politically left-of-center Globe.
What I like about the coordinated effort is not so much that we're going to have a message that aligns with them, because they may have a much more aggressive message. Our message is one that's consistent with our values, which is to defend the First Amendment, to stand for civility, and to give voice to voiceless people.
But some media critics see the newspapers as thin-skinned at a time when public trust in the press is at an all-time low. At the Tennessean, one of the largest newspapers in a state that voted 2-1 for Trump in 2016, Thursday's editorial is not targeting the president.
I may not even mention President Trump in my particular editorial.
Not only are newspapers participating in the campaign, the Radio Television Digital News Association is asking its 1,200 members to dedicate airtime, post online editorials, and share information on their social media platforms about the role that they play in preserving the public's right and need to know about government for and by the people. Steve Herman, VOA News, Washington.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Avocado toast is a hot trend among young Europeans who routinely pay more than €12 for a smear of the mashed fruit on hot bread. Now Kenyans are cashing in. Across Kenya's ochre fields, farmers are switching out coffee and tea for avocados in a bid to profit from growing European demand. Harvesting is a low-tech affair. A broken wood ladder and an old machete are all it takes to chop down the hard green avocados collected young so they reach Europe ripe. In European markets where they are sold alongside others from Chile, Israel and Mexico, they easily fetch 10 times that amount, if not more. Next up, the fight against food waste could start with a pint of beer. To make beer, brewers soak malted barley in hot water to release the grain's sugars. The spent grain can be given to farmers to be used as feed, but in New York, it is usually sent to a landfill. This is where Bertha Jimenez, co-founder of Rice Products, comes in. She takes the spent barley, grinds it into a flour, and sells it to bakeries and restaurants. She says her team is exploring how to recycle food waste left behind from other products such as wine, coffee, and juice. And she's looking at ways to bring the technology to Latin America and Africa. And in other recycling news, for anyone who gets their hair colored, sitting with your head covered in pieces of aluminum foil is a familiar experience. But have you ever wondered what happens to all that foil once it's washed out of your hair? For the Salamander Bay Recycling Centre in Port Stephens, Australia, General Manager Gerard McLaughlin says the landfill wasn't a suitable destination, so he took action. He started collecting scraps of aluminum foil from 6 area hairdressers, and in just 8 months, he's collected 1 ton of foil scraps for recycling. Around 500 Australian hairdressers called sustainable salons are already recycling, and that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. So, you know what happy is, and medium comes between small and large.
To find a happy medium.
So, is this idiom about feeling kind of happy?
How is it going with your neighbor? Is he still complaining about your playing the trombone at night?
He was, but it's fine now.
How did you guys work it